translating it. And when then on the following night, Friday, we bring you that raw translation that's projected up on the screen, and that's what we're using. So, let's get started with the basics. Everything I'm going to share with you tonight is not of my own creation or making. I'm very non-innovative on this. I'm simply translating and passing on to you what I learned from my teachers, and they pretty much told me that that's what they were doing as they learned from their teachers, and so on and so forth, back quite a ways. And so in a sense, you're getting a very straight, unbroken tradition of study and practice that really is at the heart of the Buddhist experience. It really consists of two elements. One element is the study or the theory, and that's what this text will help us with. And the other is the actual practice or training of the mind and the body, the emotions, what we call self-cultivation, cultivating this ground of your being, so that there's some dialogue happening between the theory and the practice, and eventually they come together. So what the theory does is guide, inform the practice. It gives a basic concepts, the theory, so that you can be sure that you're in a solid mode of training. And then the practice itself, interestingly, done in the correct way, starts to increase insights and understandings that then, when you come back to the text makes more sense. And as the text makes more sense, the practice gets deeper, and as the practice gets deeper, the text starts to make even deeper sense. And eventually there's this kind of mutually responding cycle that's going on between theory and practice. And it's self-sustaining. So if you come for enough classes and you get the basics, you can continue this on your own without having necessarily needing a monastery or a temple or a teacher, because you can take the texts themselves as their teacher, and you take your practice as your monastery, and you create this space for this dialogue between theory and practice. This is essentially goes back to the same method used by the Buddha. He went from teacher to teacher. They gave him practices. As the practices deepened, so did his understanding. His understanding deepened, so on and so forth, until finally he had a profound awakening experience. If you just practice these meditation exercises without the study and the theory, they tend to be blind. They tend to just go off as experiences with no context, no frame on which to evaluate them. On the other hand, if you're just studying, you don't practice, it's sterile. And nothing happens because it's just an intellectual exercise. So the ideal thing is the two of these together. That's why a famous monk, Zhi said they're like two wings of a bird. One theory, one practice. Together the bird can fly. With one wing, it just flops around. So this is why we do this methodology. Now, there's a lot of ways to practice. This is only one of them, sitting meditation. However, for a lot of people, it's the preferred way because it's so complete and so direct and brings everything together in a very tight experiential package. Moreover, that you can do with minimum amount of accoutrements, images, statues, even the monastery itself. So it's particularly modern, it's portable, it's inexpensive. You do not have to buy these things, okay? These cushions, I know you see them in the back of journals and online, and they can get pretty pricey depending on what they're stuffed with and what the external cover is. You don't really need these. You can take a towel and fold it up and use it for the same purposes, okay? Same with a little pad that people buy. Those can get also very pricey. They don't increase your chances of awakening one bit. So save your money. It's all about your mind. It's all about your mind. That's where you put the investment. And that doesn't require any money either. In fact, maybe just enough would be ideal. Too much and your mind will go in a direction you don't have any control over, and too little is the same. So what the practice consists of, though, is 3 elements. And as far as we can tell, these 3 elements underlie most of the contemplative traditions. They go way back, and they seem to come out not just in Buddhism, but throughout Southeast Asia and East Asia with these contemplative study traditions. Basically, the first element is called Shila. It means moral ethics, purity. And what you're doing here is the first stage is a process of self-reflection and purification so that you are getting your life in order. And you're living and talking and thinking, conducting yourself in a way that produces harmony, reduces anxiety, and clears the conscience. When the conscience is clear, when it's not disturbed by residue from killing, harming yourself, harming others, dishonesty towards others, self-deception, so on and so forth, when the background is clear and undisturbed, then the next stage, which is called samadhi, or concentrated awareness or equanimity of mind, happens naturally. So even if you didn't do the sitting meditation practice, but you did the first stage, quite naturally, just by itself, your mind and your nature would start to become calm and clear, balanced, and your life would start to reorient. Your priorities would become much clearer, straight. Your decision-making would be much more immediate and untroubled and so forth. However, as the basis, once you have the Shila, then to take up the meditation practice, which is the training of concentration in a particular way through sitting, although it can be done standing, walking, and even lying down. We're going to focus on the sitting aspect of it. The mind then naturally, once the conscience is clear, settles. It doesn't have disturbances, and the texts say it's somewhat like a pond or a lake where when the wind dies down and everything settles, the surface of the lake is just tranquil, and everything just reflects in it perfectly, the stars, the sun, the moon. In the same way, once the ethics part of this is straight, the waters are really calm. And therefore, when you focus and bring your concentration, it's really easy to develop both insight and calm, equanimity. The third stage is called prajna, or pana, and it means wisdom, insight, also means bodhi, in the sense of liberation and completely understanding things very much as they really are. And it's very profound. I mean, it leads up to very, very profound states. But the teaching has it that when the first 2 are in place, the third one happens by itself. Now, this is really interesting. In other words, once the conscience is clear and there's a calming of the mind, and then there's a focused concentration of equanimity through the meditation practice, the insights happen by themselves. It's not something you need to seek for. And this goes back to probably the most important thing about this whole teaching, is that this potential, what we call awakening, or I won't use enlightenment, I like awakening better, wisdom, understanding, liberation, a profound grasp on the whole purpose and meaning of being a person, and connecting with one's spiritual nature. The text and the teachings say this is whole and complete, innate in every one of us. It's not lacking in each of us. It's already there. And the only reason it doesn't manifest fully is because we cover it over, we obscure it, we get it twisted and distorted, and then we think it's lacking and not there, and then we begin to go out and search for it. So this teaching then is called nothing more than a return or recovery of this innate potential. So I want to really stress that, because sometimes people come in and do the first two stages and then get really eager and hungry for the awakening experience, thinking that it's going to come as some kind of bolt of lightning or a immediate grasp or a cathartic moment, when in fact what's happening is it just arises naturally, just as grass, when you take the concrete or coverings off of it, naturally just comes up again, returns. So does this wisdom and enlightenment just come up naturally when we take off what's covering it. So now, let's go into just the beginning part of the practice. So tonight we'll just do what to do with the body. Next week we'll concentrate on the breathing. And then the third week we'll concentrate on internally what we do mentally. Okay, first, so you want to be able to sit upright in a comfortable position. And sometimes to do that, you'll need to put a little leverage behind the back of your coccyx, the butt. Now, some people can sit naturally flat on the floor, very, very relaxed and straight, and don't need the pillow or the blanket or the towel. But if you do, get it so that it allows you to sit straight and, most importantly, to relax your diaphragm and your stomach. So if you need no pillow, go. If you need one pillow, two pillows, three, four is getting a little excessive, I think. For those people that are sitting in a chair, you can do the same thing. You just sit on the edge of the chair, sit up straight in a straight posture. Okay. Now, do you notice this floor is beveled a little bit, so actually you already have a slight incline forward. When I was in China, Japan, many of the benches where you sit are actually beveled. So they'll have a sitting bench around the hall, like a platform, and then it's slanted like this. So you're actually sitting on the slanted platform that's facing slightly forward. So it's already built in to help. This was not a Zen Chan hall. This was actually a Christian church at one point, but they anticipated we'd be doing this in the future, and so they beveled the hall forward for us, and it's worked out perfectly. So that being said, okay, now the sitting posture, you can sit in a full lotus position, you can sit in what's called a half lotus position, and you can just sit cross-legged depending on your abilities. So the ideal position is a yogic posture. It's called Vajrasana, full lotus, and now we need demonstrators to demonstrate the Vajra position. So is anybody in that position right now? Okay, so he's in that position, but your legs are, so uncovered your legs, and now you need to rotate 360 degrees so people can see. Oh yeah, there you go. Now, everybody saw that? He's going a little quick. Okay. Yeah, why don't you come up here? Please, anybody who's demonstrating, do not levitate tonight. We don't want to. Yeah, just sit there. Okay, so when you sit in that position, left leg goes on top of the right thigh, right leg goes on top of the left thigh. Okay? Now you can all try this. Don't scream and don't force it. That's called full lotus. And it's better if you have the feet back, not towards the front, but pulled back up. Okay? Now, some people are born naturally elastic, and others are born like me, not. And so it took me a long time to get that position. And my first years of meditation were a continual struggle of trying to get the full lotus position. I thought it did not apply to Westerners, that this was an Asian genetic posture, and that Westerners couldn't do this. But it's not true. You're not from America, but you're still doing full lotus, right? So yeah. Okay, so that's the full lotus position. Now, half lotus. Well, why don't we keep you up there? Half lotus is just one leg under and one leg on top. If you're going to do the half lotus, I would say every other sit reverse, so that the other leg's on top. And that keeps a kind of symmetry. Okay? So now he's sitting like that, but next Friday he'll sit that way. Okay, that's a half lotus. And then the cross-legged position is simply crossing the legs like so. Okay, any questions on the legs? So if you can do full lotus, do it and try to stay with it for the entire time you sit. If you can do half and sit with it the entire time. If you sit cross-legged, then do it for the entire time. Basically, what you're creating here is a base, a solid base. That's why it's called Vajrasana. It's a diamond shape. So the solid base is the diamond. You can see, and it's good when you do this to have your knees touching the front. When I started, my knees were way up like this because that's the only way I could get it. And it looked absolutely absurd. I was sitting in the Chan Hall, and all the monks and nuns, it was just like this level plane until you came to me. Boop, boop. But then I covered it with a blanket to pretend that it was really that way, but it didn't. Like the man who ate his hat. Right. No. So that gives the position. Well, I'm just going to use you for a standard model tonight. Okay, that's the base. And you can see how the diamond on the bottom then begins to go up to the head. And if I had the illustration, you would see the dynamics of concentration. The base coming up and then the concentration going down to the center here. So it's a very balanced posture. Okay, once you get the legs in that position, your hips and shoulders and your ears should align on the same plane. So the shoulders align with the hips, and then the shoulders also align with the ears in one plane. So you're sitting up straight. Now, if you're finding yourself kind of doing this, leaning forward, then you might have to get something underneath you in the back to get that leverage up a little. So try it. If you're not feeling comfortable, you're bent or your spine's not straight, get a little leverage behind. Okay, the forearms rest on top of the thighs. So your arms are not held up, but they're resting. And this is the forearm here, just sits right on top of the thigh. So that way you can relax your whole shoulders and arms and your chest eventually and your neck, because you're not, as soon as you try to hold them up, you put a strain. By letting them relax, all your energy just drops. The left hand is down on the bottom, the right hand on top, like so, and the thumbs just gently touch to complete a circuit. It's not a special mudra, or it's just completing a circuit of energy with the hands, just natural and relaxed like so. Okay, now keep the mouth, especially the jaw, relaxed. Don't clench your teeth. And you don't open your mouth. You breathe through the nose. So, once you're aligned this way and you're straight, you let your head just tip slightly forward, maybe 10 degrees from straight up to slightly forward. The lips are closed. The teeth aren't touching. Jaw's relaxed. And then you slightly curl your tongue back until it touches, just makes a light touch with the hard palate, which is the fleshy part immediately behind your top teeth. Now, if you go back too far, you'll feel an indentation and it rises up. That's the soft palate. You don't want to be there. Just slightly on the hard palate. And this closes the front and back meridian. The breathing takes place through the nose. Now, the eyes, and this is very important, are not completely closed, nor are they wide open. So the way to do this is to let them gently close, the lids close, and then bring the lids open just a slight bit, as if raising a shade, maybe a sixth up from the window. The eyes are open enough so that you can let light in, you can know there's an outside environment, but you can't see anything focused clearly. The eyes then gaze down in a direction off the nose. They don't look at the nose, okay? Don't look at the tip of your nose. You will indeed get cross-eyed and then get a headache. So let your eyes gaze off the tip of your nose, down at an angle towards the floor, And then here's the contemplation you do. The eyes look off and regard off the nose regards the mouth, and the mouth regards the center, the heart, which is down below the navel. So this exercise is bringing your concentration, your attention inward, down into what's called the dantian. So your focus of your concentration, your attention, is about 2 inches below the navel and 2 inches in from the navel. This is called the square inch. So you're not thinking, you're not concentrating between your brows, between your ears, nor are you putting your energy into your throat or your chest or even your stomach, but you're dropping it down almost to the cradle of your hips, 2 inches below and 2 inches from the navel. And that's where your breathing also drops to. And this is essentially the sitting posture. So once you start this, you want to leave yourself in this position for the entirety of the sit, because now you've just relaxed and you've centered the body, and you can leave it in this state and forget about it, and then you can focus on the mental part. Did I leave anything out? Okay. Unless you want to stay there. One last thing, most important. In this position, you're not too far forward, leaning this way, and you're not leaning back. You're just up. You're not leaning left, and you're not leaning right. Don't let your head do this, and don't let it do that. When you get in this position, the most important thing you do now, if you can, everybody just stay with me a minute, is totally relax your body. So although the scaffolding, so to speak, your skeleton, is in this upright, alert position, the muscles, the sinews, the tendons, the ligaments, everything is just soft and relaxed like silk. No muscle is tense or holding. And so you really, really let go, relax. And as soon as you do this, especially as soon as you relax your diaphragm, the breathing and concentration naturally drops down. And if you do this correctly, almost immediately you'll feel a rush of circulation. Because with everything relaxed, then all the capillaries and the pores, the arteries, the veins, and the channels of prana or chi can flow effortlessly, unencumbered. If you ate too much, you will find an obstruction. So it's always good not to eat before class, or if you do eat just enough, less than, say, 80% full, and then it won't be a problem. If you eat too much, though, you'll feel the obstruction. So if you do this exercise in this way, and nothing more, if you do this for 15, 20 minutes a day, you will increase your health and well-being just physically, physiologically. And there's been a couple studies done to show that this is the case. If in addition to that, you can empty your mind of extraneous thoughts and worries and anxieties for that 15 or 20 minutes, you not only increase your health, but you lengthen your life, and you bolster the immune system. But these are all incidental byproducts of this meditation process. This is not the main reason for doing it. Okay? So let's stop there. Any questions on the sitting part? How many people have been sitting with their eyes closed? Come on, be honest. Okay. I know it's going to be hard to break that habit, but it's very important if you want to advance over time to get into the habit of having the eyes just slightly open. If you look at good statuary and iconography and look at the face of the Buddha or whoever's sitting, you will notice that the eyes are not completely closed. And in fact, when I first came to the monastery, I didn't get all this great instruction. I had to put it together over years. My teacher just said, well, do what that statue's doing. So looking at the statue, I couldn't get the gold aura, and I couldn't get the legs in the right position. But if I looked closely, I did notice that the eyes were not completely open or closed, just slightly. The reason for this is because this posture then allows you to bring your mind to a focused attention that doesn't become too drowsy or too hyper. And if the eyes are closed, you'll get drowsy and slip into a torpor-like state. If the eyes are too open, you would become agitated and hyper. So having them in that middle state is like a sail that is completely balanced with the wind, not too slack and not too tight, and the vessel moves. It's the same way with then the meditation can take a dynamic, investigative track rather than slipping into agitation or torpor. So it's quite important. Okay, enough on that. Next week we'll go into the breathing, how to do the breathing that accompanies this, and then finally the toughest part, the mind. So we'll go to the text next. We've been running through in a rapid way. I don't normally do this. I'm only doing this till we catch up. Once we catch up, I won't do this anymore. I find this incredibly rude and impolite to have you in front of me, but I'm looking at this. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I do not want to whack myself out of shape by trying to read the text this way. And since it's just a summary, I'm not going to do a printout. Okay. So, where we are tonight. Does everybody know what we're reading? I was just thinking. Okay, what we're reading is a letter, an essay by a monk called Han Shan from the Ming dynasty around the time of Shakespeare. So when Shakespeare was, writing, "To thine own self be true, and it follows it's the day and the night thou canst be none true to no man," blah, blah, blah. He was writing this. And he was writing this to a government official who had figured out that being a government official was not the end-all and be-all of life. And in particular in China, had been through a number of situations where he realized it was time to really cultivate himself and try to find out what was it all about. Name and fame and power were obviously not it. And so he writes this very sincere letter asking this monk, could he give him instruction on the basics of this self-cultivation process. Han Shan then begins to launch into essentially some of the same stuff I said tonight. You begin with the ethics, the clearing of the conscience, then you begin the practices of calming and gathering your mind in. Now this process of gathering your mind in is simple, and yet you will encounter many things in the process of doing this. Why? Because you let your mind go to rot. You let your mind ground go to weeds. Your emotions, your impulses, your habits, and so forth have become so snarled and caught up with confusion with the world, with what we call klesha or fanna in Chinese, which means negative states of mind and emotions and so forth that obstruct the natural flow of your health and wisdom. Because this has accumulated over not just this lifetime, but many lifetimes, when you want to return and go back to your original mind, you're going to meet all those entanglements that you've set up. And so just be prepared, Han Shan says, when you meet these, not to be, don't flake out, don't freak out, don't get afraid, just stay steady and constant, and eventually these will dissolve. You'll burn through them like a knife going through butter if you're just constant and you stay with the method. But he says, I'm afraid, and where we got last week, that if you don't know about this, when you encounter this resistance that your ego has set up, then you'll be afraid or you'll lose hope, you'll despair, and you'll quit. So at this point he's saying you need to be steadfast because it's not going to be necessarily an easy ride. Moreover, he says, the difficulty we encounter is in direct proportion to the difficulties we've created with our life. So the more that we've set up, the more we've strayed from this original mind, the more difficult it is to get back in touch with it. And the converse is also true. Nonetheless, he says, if you're true and you stay with this method, no matter what, eventually you will break through. You will make the return. So it's only to be feared that you won't practice and you won't persevere. And he said, at this point, don't think that you have a better method or a quicker method through something else and jump off and then take up something else, because the image they use, it's like using 2 sticks to make a fire. Anybody done that here? You guys don't do it to... Not successfully. Okay, do you know how you do 2 sticks? I thought you just rub them together like this, which isn't how you do it. Well, you can do it like that too if you got calloused hands. The standard way is you take a bow, a string and a bow, and you have 1 stick there, and you bow it, and that whirls it around, and then it's on a lower piece of wood, and you create the friction. And if you keep going like this long enough, with the right wood, not wet wood and not in the rain, and you keep doing this, eventually you'll get it hot enough that you can start a fire. So they use this metaphor in the meditation. Once you have the method, you know how to do it, stay with it. Don't get till it's almost a little hot and you say, oh, that doesn't work. Maybe I'll try, something else. Maybe I'll try a magnifying glass. But then it's just the magnifying glass, you kind of, your hands shaking, oh, that's not working. Then, and you hop, you never penetrate. You never make it. So stay with this no matter what. And actually, as you get closest to the fire starting, that's the time you're most exhausted and most sort of thinking, this is not going to work. So there's famous Chan poems like this. Anyhow, so then he goes on and he says, stay on it. Is that where we are? I'm on page 4 of 4, which doesn't make sense. Stay on it, though ghosts and spirits wail and sob. Isn't that where we left?
Here we are.
Right. So he's saying, now at this point, ghosts and spirits wail and sob. This is very hard to translate and understand. Absolutely just sweep all these states away. If you cultivate with this kind of effort, you will naturally receive good news. Now, the ghosts and spirits, for the beginning class here, I can say you can take literally or figuratively, as you like. You can say, oh, it's figurative. It's just talking about the inner resistances, my inner demons, if you want to use that language, right? Those are the ones that come up. Or you could say, these are actually external states. These are actually ghosts and spirits that trouble you in the state of meditation. Whichever one you like. Or both. Or neither. Just say it's negative states or resistance. There's a lot on this. We spent last semester talking about this. I'm not going to go over in great detail, except to say, most likely he's talking about both real states that manifest, real in the sense that they are external, and basically talking about inner resistance. You don't have to believe it, and you may not even encounter it. But if you do, he's saying, even if it gets to this point, don't worry. Do not be moved. Okay? Then we go on. If you can hold fast to one thought, if you can hold your mind steady in a single concentrated way, these states will naturally just be exposed and disappear by themselves. And all of your confused thinking, false thoughts will fall away and crumble immediately. They will be like optical illusions, literally mirage of flowers in the air. Created by the heat of the sun, they all vanish. So if you can pass through this experience and not be moved by it, you will obtain measureless light ease and be completely free and unencumbered. So at some point in the process of self-cultivation, you will meet this resistance, you'll meet these states if you are steady and realize that they're all basically like illusions, that there's nothing there. Suddenly, with that focus and equanimity, they in fact dissolve. You do not have to engage them and fight with them. They in fact are figments of imagination. Okay? So this is just, we tonight, if this is your first night, just relax. We just dropped into the middle of something here that was, just pointedly heavy, and is not all about this. We just got to that point tonight for whatever reason. Okay. You will obtain measureless light ease. This is actually a technical term, and it refers to an incredible sense of peace and calm and well-being, of just a wonderful tranquility and feeling like everything's okay, everything's just fine. It's not a zoned out state. It's not a drug-induced state. But it's just a state of complete, both physical and emotional and mental, calm, ease, relaxation. I don't know how else to describe it. He says that you can't imagine it, but you can experience it. And once you experience it, you'll know its flavor. And this is the result of one of the first stages of meditation. If you get through this difficulty, for some people it manifests as when they're sitting. Any of you sat for a while where you start to feel a little pain in your ankles or your hips, or why they're laughing? Never. Okay, so those of you who have gone to meditation retreats, think, wow, I just stopped work. I'm going for 7 days. This is going to be great. I'm just going to, whoa, 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 7 days like a sauna, and then you get there, and the first day is kind of cool. But the second day, all of a sudden, the ankles start to hurt. And you go, come on, what's wrong? Then your knees. By the third day, you feel as if you're in a vice, and it's just pushing in all sides, and you're saying, wait a minute, nobody told me about this. Well, he did. And again, it's just another manifestation of the resistance. If you can be patient with it in this same way, and if you can I'm telling you the secret here, it's not painkillers that you take at this point. If you bring your mind to single finest focus concentration, it will go away. It will go away. And you'll feel the opposite. You'll feel this incredible light ease. Just like if you got a hose that's pinched and the water, and you just open it, and the water just goes through and flows again, that will happen. And you'll have an insight that your mind and your body are related. Duh. But a lot of people don't know that. And it's just like, research has shown that there's a correspondence between mental states, emotional states, and physical well-being. Whoa, $3 million longitudinal study. These texts talking about this 3,000 years ago. And even kids know this. But, we have to rely on modern science to show us what's obvious. So in any event, if you do this, if you can bring your mind, not only will the mental, emotional states just disappear, and you'll say, wow, what was I getting so freaked out? It was just nothing. But even more interestingly, physically, you will have a feeling of this light ease. I don't have time to tell the story that I first experienced it. I was sort of tricked into it, but maybe I'll save it for Halloween because it happened on trick-or-treat time. But I didn't believe this. This is BS. This doesn't work. I'm trying. I'm really concentrating. The pain's not going away. Come on. And then I would go, you should drill. You go to where the pain was and you wrestle with it. So I'd go to my hip and talk to the pain, and the pain would just go and turn it up, So I realized that having a standoff, macho style, wasn't going to do it. Then I would do the denial. I'm not in pain. I don't feel any pain at all. It's all in my head. It's like, that didn't work. But strangely enough, when I came back to my meditation topic as if nothing else existed, then suddenly it was all gone. I'm like, whoa, that's really weird. So it works. But the story will have to wait till another time. It has to do with pumpkins. Okay, so he says, when you get to this is just an initial accomplishment of a novice. This is just beginner stuff. Don't take it as something mysterious and profound. Even if you have reached a state of tranquility and light ease, don't get carried away with this happiness. If you do, a demon, in other words, an affliction of happiness, will possess your mind. And this just becomes one more obstacle. So you become blissed out. You've seen this at meditation centers, like, people in this blissed out state wandering around, their feet are hardly touching the ground. But what goes up must come down. See, and the other problem is once you get it, then you're afraid you're going to lose it. And so the happiness turns into worry that you're going to lose your happiness, which then guarantees that you'll lose your happiness because you're worried about losing it, and so forth. But then having lost it, you start getting angry with yourself that you want to get it back. You try to find where was it that you got that point of happiness, and you start to go into the demon state. This is the demon state of affliction. So what he's saying is, don't obstruct yourself with progress. Don't obstruct yourself with fear that you're not making progress. Just practice. So if good states come, fine. Don't pay any attention. Just keep moving on. Bad states come, fine. This is the saying in the school, if the Buddha comes, slay the Buddha. If the demon comes, slay the demon. It means good states, bad states, level them out and keep moving on. Don't stop here. Okay? When you find yourself stuck, such as at we translate as your meditation topic of your practice, the Huato, and your contemplation are ineffective at reaching and uncovering the seeds of craving and desire that are so firmly packed in the eighth consciousness, you must bow to the Buddha's great sutras, engage in repentance. Now, again, we're re-summarizing. We went through this last semester. Basically, he's saying, if in your meditation practice you reach a state where you cannot penetrate it, you cannot remain calm, and even trying to bring your mind back to concentration, you can't do it. It's so disturbing. And sometimes you get to this state and you don't want to sit anymore. It's too difficult. He's saying there are other methods, expedient methods within the tool of dharmas that you can use. Bowing, reciting, engaging in repentance, giving, all kinds of different techniques. In other words, what you do is you take your attention off what you were doing and refocus on something else. This is a very common psychological technique, okay? If you're not making headway, Einstein had some saying, if you do something that doesn't work and then keep doing it, thinking that it will, this is ultimately stupid. In other words, if you're not getting results but you keep at it again and again, this is really a foolish way to proceed, so back off. So somebody had a question last week about, I gave the description, when you're sitting in this process of meditation, whatever comes up, don't react to it and respond to it and engage it and try to wrestle with it. That's called yielding. And at the same time, you don't want to repress it and try to push it away. But you do the third thing, which is just to observe, calmly observe, and it will pass by itself. So the question, I forgot who asked it, somebody asked a question, well, how is taking your mind off of it a kind of repression? I don't know who asked. Who asked? Somebody asked last week. Okay. But what's going on here is something very interesting. This practice of meditation, or this practice of self-cultivation, is actually activating a faculty of your mind that is not normally what we use. It's called insight, or awakening, or simply in Chinese, jian seeing. And it's an for want of a better word, an intuitive, natural faculty of seeing that is quicker than thought and clearer than feeling, and is not able to be controlled or directed by will. It happens in and of itself. It's the mind's natural opening to things as they really are when it is not engaged in repression or in following something. So this it's really quite remarkable. So what's happening here, this is called true seeing. This is called the original mind at work. So when you don't repress, but you simply refocus, you come back to your meditation topic, what you've done is you've cleared out the ground, and then what's really there becomes crystal clear. So it's kind of an indirect seeing by not focusing too intently on it. Does this make sense? So this is what's meant by insight or direct seeing. And it's called immediate because it's not mediated by anything else. You can't will it, and you can't feel your way through it, and you can't even use your intellect. But if you simply return to the single-minded practice, boom, things become very clear. At this moment, it can cause you to have tears. It can cause you to have an emotional release because for the first time you've seen it really clearly, whereas it's been sort of obscure in the past, and it's so crystal clear. The actual seeing of it is the liberation through and from it. It's really interesting. It's because you see it so clearly, you are now freed from whatever it was, and then you can move on. Some people experience this in meditation, some people experience it in bowing. Sometimes it's a very simple thing, something carried over from the past to your childhood. Something you've done and forgot about or put down that's sort of pressuring there. And sometimes, as with the Buddha, it's most profound. He saw his past lives. He saw all the causes and conditions that brought him to that moment. And he saw things clearly as they were, complete awakening. So it can be from everything from a very mundane opening through. It might be you see a relationship clearly that you've gotten into that is dysfunctional and unhealthy, and wow, boom, you just see it and you can move on. Okay? You had a question.
Can you talk about
Well, the bowing is another form of single-minded meditation practice, and you're using the Buddha as a focal point of your concentration, but you're not bowing to the Buddha as an icon, hoping that the Buddha will then deliver you from your troubles. But you are literally bowing yourself into a state of single-minded concentration where the Buddha within manifests. So when you are bowing, single-mindedly bowing, with no thoughts of past or future, with no expectations of getting or thinking the Buddha is going to reward me for bowing, but you enter the samadhi of bowing, it's the same as sitting. It's not any different.
I think I've also heard you talk about bowing being sort of an act of humility.
Well, bowing is a particular practice that's really difficult for people who are arrogant, and so it has the counter effect of exposing to a little humility. So it's a specific practice for overcoming self-inflated pride. But meditation is also a specific practice for overcoming scatteredness. So it's like each one of these is meant as an antidote to the state of mind that's obstructing awakening. So it goes back to the original. If everything's whole and complete and natural, and as the text says, ordinary beings are just the Buddhas, and you're saying, well, wait a minute, I'm an ordinary being, how come I'm not a Buddha? Well, because there's that obstruction. Pride, arrogance, scatteredness, dissoluteness, amorality, you name it. I mean, there's a list of things that will keep you from that. And so the practices are like medicine that antidotes those. Bowing counteracts humility. Meditation counteracts scatteredness. The precepts, studying the precepts and ethically balancing yourself cuts back on dissoluteness and harming. Giving counteracts stinginess. Patience counteracts the opposite. So each one can be used specifically, but in the end, they're all the same. They're to counteract what's ever obstructing your natural awakening, and once that obstruction is gone, the awakening happens. So people get enlightened bowing.
It does seem like sort of a powerful thing to put in this context, where you tried everything and you're finally giving up, and it's just like, okay, I'm just going to bow and admit that I'm getting nowhere. He figured it out. I'm not there.
Yes, and it's, I'm supposed to not review, but this is a trick. It's just a trick. It's a trick to get you to focus and concentrate in another way. When the mind focuses, when the scattered mind stops, that very stopping is awakening. That's what the text says. What? When the scattered mind stops, when the confused mind stops being confused, that very stopping is bodhi. Wait a minute. Wow. So however it takes to stop it, that's the practice that's the best for you. So he's saying if your meditation is at this point, jump to something else, try something else, because it will reset the frame for you and allow you to come in at another way. That's all that's going on here. The thing to not do, though, is think, oh, I sat, it's 3 days, it's starting to hurt. I'll go to bowing. And then you bow for 3 days and say, oh, that's really hard on the back and whatnot. I think I'll go to recitation. And then you say, well, maybe I'll bring fruit every weekend and do some giving. So don't quit because, you have a light resistance. Only quit when and he's saying when you're really stuck. Okay? So obviously I won't get much I'm not going to show pictures from Maine tonight. I showed those last week of my summer vacation. But I wanted to show you one text, if you would bring that up. This is a little more theory, but it's a textual-based passage. And the reason I'm doing this is because when I first started out practicing, my teacher gave us this text. And it's really straightforward. And I think in terms of theory, I just want to present it tonight for you to think about. When we first started, it wasn't clear we knew where to look, what to attend to in terms of our practice, in terms of cultivation. Do we imitate the teacher? Do we hope that we get a response from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, a divine intervention of sorts? and so forth. And he gave us this text. So this is a translation of it. And basically it describes from this wisdom tradition a view of human nature that is really interesting and lays the ground out for the whole practice that we've been talking about tonight. So it starts by saying the human spirit, what we are essentially, tends towards purity, but the mind, our thoughts, disturb it. The next one is the human mind tends towards stillness, towards equanimity and calm, but desires entice it away. So you got two things here. Our thoughts disturb that natural state, and then the desires, the cravings, the aversions, the anxieties, because that's another form of the desire, then tends to stir it up and there is no longer stillness. If you can control those desires, in other words, harness them, the mind will naturally be still, and if you can clear your mind, your spirit will be pure. So it's actually just saying you don't need to seek the purity and stillness. All you have to do is stop what's causing it to be not there naturally. Then it says, your cravings will vanish, the three poisons, and this is talking about craving, aversion, and sometimes called stupidity. They will disappear. Then it says, the next line, ordinary sentient beings are unable to enter the true way because their minds are untamed. When the mind is wild, the spirit then is distracted and disturbed. So this is actually mapping out a process by which we leave the natural state. And it's very interesting. It's not something that happens in months or weeks or years. It can happen within a few minutes. So if the mind is not clear, if the mind's not calm, and if the cravings aren't channeled, then we become unruly, untamed in our minds. And when the mind is untamed, the spirit, our essential spirit, gets distracted and disturbed. Now, when the spirit's disturbed, it starts to look outside and attaches to the 10,000 things. So the searching, the questing that we feel, this anxious search and quest, is actually driven not by need, but by a spirit that is disturbed, off-center. And we think then that by grabbing, getting, whatnot, we will actually calm the spirit. And then it says when the spirit is disturbed, attaches, the 10,000 things are sought. Then craving and desire emerge more. And because craving and desire rise again, stress and anxiety rise, and body and mind are afflicted by tensions. So people say, well, can I come on Friday night and learn a little stress reduction? Here it is. Okay, this is talking about how you fundamentally deal with stress reduction. And it's saying essentially if you let your spirit get disturbed and let it go out and search outside for all of this, what happens is it will only increase a disturbance, anxiety in body and mind, and tension and anxiety will. Then, as a result, you will live in disappointment and anxiety, and you sink into this ocean of disquietude, of angst, suffering, and forever stray from this true way. Now, what I like about this last line, what I was saying, he says, if you can see intuitively, in other words, if you can calm, stop, and let your mind just see it intuitively, you will live the true and natural way. That is that you can find your way back just like that. And if you understand this way intuitively, you will always be pure and still. This is a wonderful passage. And this was one of the first ones my teacher gave us to work on, to think about, and to contemplate as we began our practice. So I share it with you tonight because it's such a poetically beautiful description. But I think psychologically, if you can actually sit sometime quietly and ask, why am I so anxious, disturbed, intense, whatnot? And you can use this as a sort of template to trace back. Well, then it's because my spirit is really off-center. Why is it off-centered? Boom, 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 boom. And you can go back and actually recover this on your own without any external, I don't know, interesting? This is called the Qing Jing Jing. Qing Jing Jing, the classic of purity and stillness. How's that? Do I have the Chinese for it? I do. Do you want to, next week, you want to see the Chinese? This is only part of it. It's actually a very short text, but I gave you the heart of it is in this process here. But I could show you the Chinese. It's very tourist, but it's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. How many people read Chinese? You read Chinese? 2, 3, 4. More hands going up. 5, 6. Okay. If I post it, can you send it? So if you're on the email list and you want the Chinese for this, just talk to those two guys. You don't have to see them, they're online, so it doesn't matter what they look like, right? And then they can send you the Chinese for this. But again, this goes back to my teacher, instead of just giving us little lectures and talks, he would always refer us back to the text. And his idea was to follow what he was following rather than follow him. And so by giving us this text, he gave us something that we can continue to contemplate even though he's gone and think about this. Whereas if I just wrote down what he said, I might not remember it. In fact, I didn't. I wrote it down and I didn't remember it because I wasn't paying attention to what he was saying. I was writing it down. Does that make sense? So he said, if you really listen with your heart, you'll never forget it. But if you write it down, you'll never remember it. He was right. So the way the lesson came, of course, we would sit down in front of him. He might sit on a stool like this, and we would sit down, and he would speak in Chinese, and I knew absolutely none, and now I know a little more. But then I knew none, so Hung Sure would translate, and I would scribble this down madly, taking notes. And I wasn't paying attention to him because he was teaching not only with his words, but with his body, with his, his contact. He'd look at me and whatnot, writing down my notes. And so he just gently reached over and took my notebook out of my hand. And I thought, oh, he's going to see my notes. And so I'm writing, okay, so this is like this way, right? I'm writing this way, and he grabs it like this. And of course, now it's upside down. And he's going, I'm going, Master, you got it upside down. He says, who does, you or me? And then he gave it back to me. So after that, I learned that I'd learn a lot more by really observing and listening, and I actually started to learn the Chinese that way because I was so desperate to understand what he was saying that I could actually start to listen and learn the Chinese by paying attention. And of course, it all turned out that I had to rely on Hung Shu's translation, which was iffy. Because right in the middle, I was writing down, and Hung Shu would translate, and the master would go, no, that's not what it means, in English. And then he'd blush, and I'd scratch it out and go back. So, careful who you rely on. Enough for tonight. Any questions, observations, issues? So this is how we do it. It's not terribly exciting. It's pretty staid, but I guarantee that if you get the method down and you get some access to the text, you'll be able to, in a reliable way, take this up yourself. And I can't think of a better use and a better investment of learning than this method that's been coming down from generations. It will truly bring immense benefit over time if you stay with it and do it in a correct way. So this is what the class is about. So next Friday, we'll meet again, 7:30 here, and we'll go into the breathing part of it. Questions, announcements?
Yeah, if you'd like to be on our email list, please come to me, and I'll add you to our Friday night email.
Right, and if you do have a request for the text, just email. Do they email you or email a list, or what is it that they email? In person. Whoa. These are actually digital clones that they look real, but they never age. They've been there for 30 years now. So if you want to get on that list and you'd like access to this, they can hook you up to the text in Chinese. I don't think this is up, though, on the text, is it? Online? Right. And the only reason we're doing this is because it's a tentative translation. This is not final. It's not polished. So if everybody downloaded it, the next thing we'd see it would be up on YouTube, and then it'd be out there. We could never call it back, and we might have mistranslated something. So until we do the final translation, basically it's in-house. But I'm willing to share all the quotes and passages like tonight's if you want. And we've done quite a bit. We got quotes from Shakespeare, Emerson, Whitman, Nietzsche, Tolstoy. It's all thrown together. That's it. Tomorrow night, I'll have a Tomsical lecture here.
Tomorrow's a full day of scheduled activities, and we have lunch here as usual. We missed it the last 2 weeks, so this week we have all the...
So they've hadn't had lunch for 2 weeks. It's you don't look the worse for it.
And Thursday roundtable. Yeah, this Thursday will be a roundtable. So for those who are interested in having a kind of a more informal atmosphere, we'll meditate for 30 minutes, and afterwards have a topic of interest for the group and just discuss.
So roundtable is not like Secret Knights organization where you come and it's a roundtable discussion, informal. Usually the monks lead it, and it's kind of discussion on contemporary stuff and Dharma. So it's pretty interesting. And if you've never had a good vegetarian meal, tomorrow's the time. Okay, we're going to do a transference. We sort of transfer the energy of tonight's gathering, and it's done in English. So we recite it together and bow, and that's it.